Regular meeting of Newark Board of Education. Meeting is called to order at 5:03 p.m. Ms. Gutierrez, roll call, please.
Vice President Nguyen?
Here.
Member Grindal? Member Hill?
Here.
President Zhang?
Here.
All present.
Approval of agenda. May I get a motion to approve the agenda as it is?
I move to approve the agenda as is.
I second it. Member Grindal, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Hill?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
My vote is as well. Motion carries with 4 ayes. Next item, study session. Continuation of our APEX credit recovery. Ms. Gutierrez, any public comments? Oh,
Yes, we do. Just 1 second.
okay, welcome our student board member. I guess this is your first meeting. So, student board member, do you want to go by member Ortiz or you have? Okay. Resendiz Ortiz. Okay. Welcome, student board member Resendiz Ortiz. Public comment for our study session?
1 second. Okay. The first one is going to be Brian Foster. This is going to be a virtual caller. Mr. Foster, you may begin.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I could barely hear some clip voices on your end. President Zhang and members of the board, since the NTA does not have a seat at the table in the room where it happens, I am limited to exercising my First Amendment rights of petitioning my government for a redress of grievances in 3 minutes or less. Given more time, I could invalidate much of what the administration presented to you at the last study session, wherein they were either retelling you lies that their subordinates told them, or they were presenting APEX's guidelines and hoping that they were actual practices. To be absolutely clear, what they told you last time is simply not true. It's a fabrication. How else do you explain that just this last week, one of my students who is currently enrolled in an APEX course said that his counselors are unlocking his units and grading his assignments? How is it that in my 4 years at Newark Memorial, our counselors have never, not once, approached me about coordinating a student's course needs in APEX? And that the only way I learn of a student being assigned to APEX is when the student tells me that he or she does not have to submit makeup assignments because they have already been issued APEX credits. How is it that counselors can instantly approve and assign APEX courses without your curriculum review, while it takes a year or more for our school to approve advanced placement courses, which are already approved by colleges? How can you explain how another student of mine just this week took issue with me and argued that APEX helps with graduation? He said he just earned credits in summer school and was counting on APEX courses at the end of this year in order to graduate. I asked him what he learned in APEX because I was prepared to praise him for his work. He said nothing. I asked him if he got his answers from the internet, and he responded that they all did. I told him that was why I was against APEX. APEX teaches our students that cheating the system is appropriate. That same student asked why APEX was wrong if it helped more students to graduate. And based on information administration gave us in the last study session, that means upwards of 30% of our graduates, a quadrupling of APEX courses in just 4 years, are relying upon APEX to graduate. I asked the rest of my class to imagine that they were waiting to cross the graduation stage. Are they proud of their accomplishments? Are their families proud? Some of them worked hard to get A's. Some worked hard to push an F into a passing grade of a D, which, by the way, is not college ready since CSUs and UCs require C's or better to graduate. Yes, they are proud, they said. I saw the grins on their faces. Then I asked them to imagine that standing next to them is a fellow student who just earned his credits in a day or two, or even with the district reported average of just 19 hours. I asked them how they felt. They all responded with anger and frustration with cries of, "That's not fair." Our students instantly recognized why APEX is fraudulent And I am left to wonder, why can't you? To be fair, our administration arrived long after our counselors were using Apex. They inherited this problem. I initially brought my concerns to the attention of our administration internally, but since then, counselors have only ramped up Apex's abuses.
Thank you.
As I did then, and as I am doing now, I invite our administration
Mr.
to
Foster,
defund
can you wrap it
Apex.
up?
Hello?
Thank you.
Okay.
Your time is up.
All right. Sorry, I have more.
Next speaker.
The next speaker is Eric Tam. Mr. Tam, you may begin.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, board, Dr. Triplett, Ms. Pierce, and staff. When I saw the Apex presentation last time, it reminded me about the base rate fallacy problem. Here's a quick example. People are very worried about vaccine effectiveness. An article cited in Finland, over 1 month, 67% of COVID infections, there were in people that were fully vaccinated. However, people hearing that high percentage might be scared of the effectiveness of vaccines. Base rate fallacy is when you do not consider the data with the whole context. So if you provide more context, Finland is 71% vaccinated. In the past 6 months, the actual number is 6 of every 1,000 vaccinated people get COVID. However, unvaccinated people are 18 in every 1,000, which is triple of vaccinated. Therefore, with better context, you see the benefits of vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Why do I bring this up? Personally, the Apex material brought me sad reminders of the MBPI deck from November of 2020. Example, Apex touted big key partners like NCAA, selecting specific measurements like pass rates by course sequence. However, we do remember how MBPI nice presentation of 99% kill rate ended up. Let's put aside the similarities in materials and dig into the data. First, thank you to President Zhang for calling out needing even more data. Ms. Pierce, in your Apex usage slide, slide 13, with hours and course breakdown, you focused on average time spent per student and talked about the blended model should be between 20 to 30 hours. However, if you use another different metric, time spent per enrollment per course, your own data shows that a student taking Apex courses time on average has a much lower range. 4 hours for Crossroads, 5 hours on the Bridge Points, and 10 hours at Newark High School. So your 20 to 30 blended model expectation is not being met. It's 50 to 75% lower on a per course basis. Should kids be passing classes after 4 hours of remediation? Second, slide 16, year-to-year comparison. If I ignore COVID years from 2015 to 2018, a 4-year period, there's an 81% increase in number of enrolled Apex courses on a per student basis. Board, you should hopefully want to ask, why would the average student need or want to take more Apex courses on a year-over-year basis, assuming a random distribution? Finally, let's use pass rate by course sequence that Apex touted in presentation. Number 1, slide 29, that Algebra 2 after Apex Geometry has a 44.4% fail rate. Math Analysis has a after Apex Algebra 2 has a 50% fail rate. However, just like my first story, let's not fall into the base rate fallacy. Board, don't just take my quick numbers, but please see that the data provided is insufficient and can be a lot more comprehensive. Please ask the staff to go back and provide a more complete analysis before a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for public speaker.
Okay, we'll go down to the table and start our study session.
Gone are the days where I just float up on Zoom, huh?
Was that something we discussed last time? The board members talked about it. His bone was beating with guilt because he was hungry the whole time. He was expecting to be
Longer studies
full
over
of
here.
I think I mentioned something
We're
about
gonna start at part two.
months before.
Yeah.
And so I promised him I would do it, but I should have let you know.
So yes, going forward,
Oh,
is that the one that
slide
this
27 or,
We'd
yeah.
like to do, yeah. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Forgive me the address of my meetings. They're the best outside of San Jose. No offense, but there's places in San Jose that are better. Other than Sacramento.
Great. Did I do that? On accident?
Okay, I got it, I
Oh,
got it.
okay.
Again, the cartoon?
Yes, please. Sorry if I accidentally clicked something. The only reason why I put the slides together is because obviously we're spending most of our time today answering the questions that you all had last time, and it made sense to just have that context there for public. So, we ready? Ready to start? Okay. All right.
Talk a little louder for our audience.
Yes. So last session, there were a series of questions that came out at the end. We wanted to spend most of this session really delving into those questions and making sure that we got thorough answers to those questions. So one of the first questions that was asked was how many students at Newark Memorial High School took APEX courses and passed-failed traditional subsequent courses in mathematics and ELA. That was the data requested. Okay, there we go. So just as a reminder, so the data that we are pulling from, I did spend some quality time with our Newark Memorial High School counselors and pulling that data. And so again, what we did is we pulled the class of 2019, that's 339 students who attended Newark Memorial for the entire 4 years because we wanted to get a full picture of what that 4-year experience looked like. Of this cohort of 339 students, 102 enrolled in APEX courses and 23 enrolled in APEX for grade improvement. So the content areas we actually did pull, we also pulled history in addition to mathematics and ELA. And then we noted the remaining sections just so you guys could be clear on which sections were being taken. And in the tables following, students enrolled in either 1 semester or 2. But what we did is we combined that data point. So if they enrolled in the 2 semesters, let's say to complete all of Algebra 1, we compiled that as one data point to see how they did on geometry the subsequent course. Instead of doing, okay, first semester and second semester, we combine that to one data point. All right, let's begin. So this first one is in mathematics. So the first example, the light blue, is students who took geometry after taking APEX Algebra 1. In the light blue, you see the students who passed. In the dark blue, you see the students who failed the subsequent course. In the orange, you see students who did not take the subsequent course. And then in the pink there, you see the students who enrolled in the APEX subsequent course. So we made sure we captured all of that data. And then in the following, you can see students who took Algebra 2 after APEX Geometry, students who took Math Analysis after APEX Algebra 2, students who enrolled in Transitions, and so on.
So does that mean the past 4 years that only 9 students, only 7 students, looking at the geometry of the APEX Algebra 1, that
7 students passed the regular geometry, and 2, I guess, failed, and 1 took the APEX, 1 didn't take.
Yeah. What's interesting about the way this data is broken out, and I don't think we would have been pushed to do it without you asking this question, so we appreciate it. What you're going to see is really which classes and courses students are taking, and it is interesting. The majority of those courses at the end, you'll notice, are in electives.
Actually, given that you have a cohort of roughly 400 students taking APEX class, and only 7 actually took the eligible 1 APEX, that's a very minimal number compared to the 400 students decided last time.
It's also, I think what should be noted here as well is each of these courses, you would either have to create a new section with its own individual teacher if you did this, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different classes, or you can embed those into the coursework, but that can be really challenging in a master schedule. And here's why. Oftentimes, if a student failed a course, that means they're taking it with the grade level behind them. And oftentimes we establish a master schedule in a way that seniors kind of have a flow for the day, juniors have a flow for the day. And so if I'm a junior taking a sophomore class, chances are that class won't be readily available. You just never know. And if it's not readily available in that one section, that might be the only time they can take their English class or their other class, and it becomes quite a challenge to schedule.
Okay. Before we move on, Ms. Pierce, just to your point, President Jen, so if taking the example of the first one on the left side, it's actually saying that 11 people took the APEX Algebra 1.
Yep.
But then 7 went on to pass.
In a time span of 4 years, is that right?
Is that correct, Ms.
I'm
Pierce?
sorry?
In a time
In a
span.
span of 4 years, right?
Yes.
You're looking at a 4 year.
And these numbers add up to 100.
Well, this would be the senior class, right? So this isn't a 4-year period. This is out of that seniors who attended Newark Memorial
Oh, I
for
see.
all 4 years.
Okay.
That's how many.
And these numbers add up to 109 students.
So remember, these numbers will not, because some of these semesters we compiled together to make one data point. So if they took, let's say, some students may only have taken 1 semester of geometry, some students may have taken 2 semesters of geometry before they went on to take, let's say, Algebra 2. And so you won't see those numbers add up because, again, we compiled those data points together because it just didn't make any sense to say, okay, these students took 1 semester versus these students took both semesters and then went on to a traditional subsequent course. But that's why I made that point, because I wanted to make sure that that data was accounted for. This is in English, so again, out of those 300 students, 339 students, these are the students who enrolled in English courses. So these are the amount of students. So here you can see 9 students went on to pass English 2 after taking APEX English 1, and similar, so taking English 3 after taking APEX English 2, English 4 after taking English 3, and then there is 1 student who took semester 2 of English 4, and we decided to add that in since it was a relevant data point and it was easy to track. No students in this case enrolled in a subsequent APEX course. 1 student did not take the subsequent course. Obviously, that is because they either finished at English 3 and took a different course. Again, as you go higher and higher, you're going to see less students take the subsequent course because they're either graduating or they're not graduating. The next one is history. So these are the amount of students who passed U.S. history after taking APEX World History. These are students who passed and failed government after taking APEX U.S. History, and these are students who did not take a subsequent course after taking econ or government. It was only one student in this case, but I wanted to make sure we marked that down. Out of the remaining courses that are not captured by this pass-fail data, we've got 15 that were semesters of foreign language, Spanish in this case, and we've got 63 that were electives. So there generally is not a subsequent course for electives. The next question was,
the
should be going over there, huh?
completion rate.
Say that again?
Yeah, the one, HMG Readiness, the
Yes.
college readiness.
Thank you, yes. So how many students that are taking APEX courses are college and career ready if we're using A to G completion as the indicator? And just as a reminder, the students here, we expect maybe would be less because these are students that are struggling in a particular content area. So really, because our graduation requirements are the same as A to G required courses, the only students that you're going to see listed here as not being A to G ready are students who have a D in a particular course or who have been able to waive themselves from graduation. So they're either special education students who are on a certificate track, they may be foster youth who are eligible for less credit, something like that, but very, very few. So most of the students here you're going to see are students who have a D in a particular course.
So these are the student group, the entire graduating class, or these are the students that are...
This is that same group of 2019 of those seniors, of those 339 seniors that stayed at Newark Memorial for 4 years.
Okay, this is the entire graduate senior class. Okay.
So this will equal your 339. Because these are students...
But this doesn't equal to 339.
Yeah, it does, if you add it all together.
336 probably. 332, I believe.
Or 332, if I had it wrong, yeah. But it's going to equal our total amount. So these are students, right, who are APEX takers. So we had 40 that were A to G, who had completed their A to G courses, essentially that they had no other Ds on their transcript. And we have 91 over here. And then for our non-APEX takers, 136 and 65. What embedded intervention options exist at Newark Memorial High School prior to requiring credit recovery? So this was more for our community, but just understanding what embedded intervention is. It's essentially intervention prior to getting to the summative, right, and realizing, oh no, we now have to make it up. So what are we doing during the day, during the school day, to try to avoid students from having to take credit recovery? So avoid having failed a course altogether. So here's some of the things that are happening at Newark Memorial High School, and we do have Ms. Rangel here, who will be talking about a little bit more of these things. Actually, would you like to talk about these, or? Sure. Come on up.
Yes. I don't stand up here. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. So we do have something unique to Newark Memorial called PAUSE. It's a proactive workshop. It's an embedded flex time every Wednesday and Thursday, about an hour, where students can receive tutorial support. Teachers do reteach concepts using informal assessments. They allow students to retest, are able to provide support to students, act as an advisory period to make sure students understand how to navigate Google Classroom, Synergy, understanding their grades, graduation requirements. So this is just one proactive way to provide support to students. We also have after-school tutorials. We have a very robust cost referral process, which allows us to remove any barriers to students' learning, such as providing mental health services, and then also providing some support, such as counselor check-ins and conferences. And just in the last year, we started a student advisory team, in which we really look at what is there a larger barrier? What can we provide this student, whether it's a 504 plan, a recommendation for assessment, or even just regular counselor check-ins to ensure that our students are being successful on site. Prior to the pandemic, we did work around differentiation and accommodation with ACOE. We had an ACOE employee come and support us with really diving in per department on how to differentiate and meet the needs of our kids. Of course, that was cut short because of the pandemic, but we were moving into even reevaluating grading policies, aligning grading policies, checking for understanding, also engagement. And they did support us through some engagement online when we went into the pandemic as well.
So I think it was, again, it's a very insightful question in the sense of, if you're going to avoid failing a course to begin with, where should your energy go? It should go into, how do we support the student prior to failing the course? And while these are all school sort of systems, more policies, more school-wide structures that are set up, this is where the real work happens, right? It happens in the classroom, it happens with the teacher and the student, and I think this is definitely an area to continue to consider for professional development at Newark Memorial High School.
So what percentage of students, as they're going through, so they're having issues, they are potentially failing the course, these interventions come into play, and you're going through, essentially a progression of interventions. What percentage of students don't make it through the interventions? I'm not sure if you know that. And then of those that don't make it through the intervention, are they put into APEX prior to failing the course, or are they put into APEX after they fail the course?
It's a great question. So APEX is a summative, so it's after they failed the course, and so that's a sort of, it's no longer an intervention. It is a credit recovery. It's a response to the fact that a student has failed the course.
So if they had taken, let's just say, U.S. history or geometry or whatever, so and are you doing it on a yearly basis or on a semester basis?
Would you like to answer that?
Yes, so it's on a yearly basis, so they have to.
So they would go through the entire year, they would fail that course that year, that would show up on their transcript that they failed that course, then they're put into APEX after that.
Yes.
And then their final transcript would show both the original fail, the F, and then the credit recovery.
Yes, and then depending on what school they attend, it's either an average of the grades, which most of them will be an average of the grades. So if you get an F and you get an A, then the average would be a C. It doesn't replace the grade. Both are on the transcript.
When you say it depends on the school, so you're talking about either Bridgepoint or Memorial?
No, depending on what the colleges accept.
Oh, I see.
You have to report both grades.
Which again, I think speaks to this isn't kind of a escape out of what happened, right? They still failed the course that ends up on their transcript. That is known by the colleges. I think at this point we are looking at students who are struggling and we are trying to get them to that finish line of graduation. And what does that look like? Again, without having to repeat content, but really thinking about targeting content that was missed the first time around. Something else you said, I think I lost it. If it comes back to me, I'll say it again. All right. So I think at this time we have some voices. So I'd like to again turn it over to Ms. Rangel. And
so I know that we've had some community voices, and one of my fears is that it's not representing the demographics of our student body. And to be quite frank with the state adding, I hear the comment grace before grades. I hear let's take into consideration the needs of our students and how the pandemic has impacted them. I think that's important to hear. I also want to say that it's hard to get students to come up here and talk when they've had a misstep in their career at Newark Memorial. So the bravery of the two young women that are here today should be recognized for them to come up and talk about their need for APEX. So the first student that I want to invite up here is Mariana Armenta Nevares. She's a 12th grade student.
Good afternoon. My name is Mariana Armenta Nevares. I'm currently enrolled as a senior at Newark Memorial High School, and I'm here to express the importance of APEX learning. My freshman year of high school, I got my first job near a few months after I turned 14. Being so young and trying to balance school and work while also trying to have somewhat of a social life wasn't very easy. As a result, my grades had suffered. The following year, my counselor had recommended I take APEX to recover my grades from the previous year, and I did, but that was only the first APEX class that I had taken. Unfortunately, due to the demands of the APEX class, I was unable to finish it. It was a lot harder than I had thought. During my junior year, we were learning online. Sitting behind computers, only to stare at a blank screen wondering what our teachers were rambling on about. I wasn't able to mentally keep up with distance learning, and I ended up failing numerous classes. I had found myself with zero motivation, and I didn't want to fail, but no matter how much I had wanted to do my assignment so I could pass, I couldn't bring myself to do it. In consequence, I didn't have enough credits to be on track to graduate this year. Over the summer, while I was in summer school, I had met up with my counselor, and together we had come up with a plan. I was to take 7 classes in person, which was the maximum amount you can take, but I was still under in credits, so we had decided on APEX to make up for those missing credits. As of right now, I'm taking 7 classes from 7:30 to 3:30 and waiting to get into APEX so I can have a chance to graduate with the rest of my class. Without APEX, I won't be able to graduate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. The next person that I'd like to invite up is Brittany Flores. She's an 11th grade student at Newark Memorial.
Hello? All right. Hello, my name is Brittany Flores Palacios. I'm a junior in
Speak a little closer just because of the mic.
Sorry. My name is Brittany Flores Palacios. I am a junior. Learning math online was a tough experience, and I failed math. My parents put me in summer school, Apex. My experience with learning math on Apex was even harder to understand. I asked my friends for their opinion, and they said, and I quote, I didn't learn anything because it was hard to understand, and I couldn't remember anything. Thank you.
I do want us to make sure that we hold some other considerations. I know these weren't the questions that were asked by the board, but I do think they're considerations that should be top of mind. One is just timing. Students and families are still grappling with the impacts of COVID-19 and being on distance learning, as you heard from our students. We really do need to keep that in mind. Equity as well. Again, I want to be very clear that equity should never, ever, ever be associated with lowering standards, and that is not what we are doing. But we do want to make sure that we provide a pathway for students who are struggling to still meet the needs while showing that they can do the work. So I just want to be clear on that. And then costs. There are some associated costs, and I think we need to be really wary of what those costs are. I know that some folks, if you've never done a high school master schedule, it's a beast in and of itself. And so I really encourage you to check in with some high school counselors because that master schedule process would create a lot of additional costs if we decided to look into some other models. I also want us just to think about the difference between implementation and platform. It's very easy sometimes to think about how technology can be used to support us. We don't want to be not in the 21st century, right? Like we need to use technology to support us without relying on technology or over-relying on technology. And so I just want to remind us that is a balance, and we really want to make sure we identify the root. Is it an implementation issue, or is it the platform itself, and being very clear on that. And so if there is some guidance around implementation, we can work on continuing improvements there. But again, how do we use technology to enhance our lives is really the balance that we're trying to achieve here. Finally, AB 104 was signed into law this summer, and it does create and really ask districts to, again, specifically for those seniors and juniors of last year. So if you were a junior in high school or a senior in high school last year, it does require really that districts look at credit recovery options in a different kind of way and open up really opportunities for students to complete coursework. In fact, even looking at the requirements not necessarily set by the LEA, but set by the state. And so that is just another thing to consider as we think about making these adjustments. And so really the recommendation from our staff at this time is in the box there. And the reason why those are in the box is because it really are kind of the options that we feel like we have an efficacious, a path forward. And that is really continuing with APEX and maintaining the current administrative adjustments. Again, Ms. Rangel talked about that last session about setting up requirements like you must take a unit quiz in front of a teacher. There's a certain minimum requirements of hours. I know we heard in the public comment around the amount of hours at Bridgepoint were different. That is true because they run a very different model at an alt-ed school. And so how you implement the program is different depending on how much involvement the teacher is using in the course. The other option would be to continue with APEX but increased adjustments, and we could really talk about what does that mean. I think you had said last time maybe we could have an end of unit assessment to kind of create that additional protection for quality or for mastery of content. Or we can continue with Apex again this year, but take this year to really compare alternatives. I will say I've already done some of that work, and many of the platforms are very similar. There's a couple that I would absolutely not use. And then there are quite a few that are very similar. Again, it really goes down to how are you implementing whatever program you choose to bring into your district. And that is it for my presentation today. So we are looking for next steps.
Okay, comments from the board?
So you, in your last slide, you were talking about process, basically, looking at root causes. Okay? I think everybody knows I'm a former consultant. I worked a lot with companies who had broken processes, and the emphasis was, don't put a Band-Aid on the broken process, identify the root cause and fix it. Okay? So we've had issues from our California School Dashboard going back many, many years, which demonstrate that at the high school we have a high graduation rate, and yet we have a low score in terms of college readiness and career readiness. What that indicates to me, right, is we have a system problem. There's something that is dysfunctional there, and it lends credence to the thought that are we graduating people, or are we pushing them through, passing them through, and they're not really prepared. We're not really preparing them. But I guess my question is before we had this technology, right, what did schools used to do? Well, they didn't have an option. They had to go back and they had to fix the fundamentals, right? And so from my viewpoint, there's something that's broken, and rather than putting a Band-Aid on it, we need to identify what that is and fix it. And there could be some instructional issues that are happening with the frontline teachers. We need to analyze that. There could be issues related to the interventions and how those are working or not working. But to basically just, essentially let holes in the system continue and then try to use Apex on the back end, and especially given, I think, some of the concerns that we've heard around potential for lack of a better term, cheating, it seems to me that it's not a good approach. So I'd like to hear more about, what we're doing to address the fundamentals that are causing this, rather than implementing a Band-Aid on the back end to sort of mask it.
So my question is, I think the AB 104 is that you give the students who are struggling two paths, either staying there for the 5th year or you have credit recovery. That's what a state law requires, right? So obviously to make a decision on the APAS, I think I want to see some financial picture of all the different options of our decision. What will be the impact? And I don't think we're ready to make a decision without knowing the financial impact, post-school financial impact. So I would love to see what will be the financial impact if we ask the student, if you are not ready to graduate, you stay there for the 5th year. Given their 3rd year and their 4th year are, in many ways, are not very effective learning yet. Do you have anything?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's my question. Because I think the 3rd year, 4th year for high school kids, I wouldn't say that high school experience from both extracurricular or academic. That's not a complete high school experience. If you are not ready, I think a better option is you should stay there for the 5th year and get your work done. So I just want to know what will be the financial impact of this if we happen to go with that route.
I think, should I answer that if I can? Yeah, okay. So I think a couple things here. I think if we are talking about financial impact, that could be, we can create an estimate, but that's going to be hard to judge because in any given year, so let's say part of my research here, there was about 4 years ago, 80% of the 9th grade class failed either their math or their English class, right? So in that kind of year, the cost would be quite high.
So my understanding is, if a student stay in high school for the 5th year, So are they not counted as part of the ADA when receiving state funding? Because if they are not counted as the ADA, then yeah, sure, we absorb the whole cost of educating this kid for 1 million. But if they are counted as the ADA, then maybe the financial impact is very minimal. The only thing that might be on the negative side is sort of the cultural taboo. Is people think that, oh, I'm here for the 5th year. There might be some mental taboo on me, or like I might feel I look bad in front of that. But other than that, financially speaking, if that's counted as ADA, then the impact should be minimal.
So there is some concerns around adults, 19-year-olds being,
I see. Well, the other thing is half of the senior class when they graduate, they're adults already, right? Yeah, so I was
You're the parent of a freshman, you may. But yes.
Could I bring something up? You mentioned like the mental taboo of the 5th year in high school. I think adding on to that, it's not only like the shame of, oh, I have to take high school again, but it's also like parents, especially coming from like, I don't know, like for me, a Latino background, like I have high expectations. Parents have high expectations of their children. It's either the side of like extreme that parents, like it looks like a disgrace almost that they have to take a 5th year, or the parents aren't even involved in their lives, that the students say, what's the point of me taking 5th year? Like I'm already 19, I'm already adult, why should I even do it? They lose the motivation, and if no one's keeping them in check and they just have to do Apex and they're already failing the classes, what makes you think they will do it again?
So the 5th year option, if they stay there for the 5th year, are they going to be in the Apex class, or are they going to take the regular class?
I think that's something that we're going to have to work out probably at an upcoming
because
session.
In the AB 104, it sounded like either using credit recovery or stay there for the 5th year. So it seems like the law is designed for the staying for the 5th year as really taking the regular class rather than going for APAS. Because if you go for APAS, that's credit recovery. That's not 5th year anymore.
No, I think the gist of that is that it's asking the school district and the teaching staff to find other ways for intervention besides as another option other than credit recovery. So within the span of the 4 years, while they're going through 9th through 12th grade and complete the APG. So they're asking the district to provide additional intervention or ways to help these students pass these courses so that they can graduate.
One of the challenges is that the schedule, the student schedule is limited, and so there's very little room in the current schedule for students to actually fail something and then be able to take the class again within 4 years. So that poses a problem. But the other thing that's maybe could be considered an intangible, but I would argue is probably the thing that's most important, is dropout. And so part of the reason that credit recovery was created is because our goal is to ensure that as many students as possible graduate, and the goal is to support students to graduate and be successful. And data shows that when students fail a class, particularly if they don't have an opportunity then to pass the class in another manner, then they're much more likely to drop out. And to me, that's like the greatest fear of all, is students dropping out because we're not offering them an opportunity to actually be successful or be able to pass.
So I have 2 points. I have 2 points I want to make. One, in terms of that makes a lot of sense, but we want to make sure we're not lowering standards in order to make that happen. So we want to use whatever tools to that's our goal. But it's not a diploma mill, right? I know that's not what you intended, but I just want to clarify that. And I wanted to go back to something Aiden said, which I thought was right on point. Apex is just part of the solution that but Aiden hit on the issue. We have a fundamental issue. Our students are not, on average, as prepared as they should be, and certainly one of the things I'd be worried about is if we're leaning on Apex. I think that's what you indicated, Member Hill. If we're leaning on Apex and not doing those early interventions, then we're really working against ourselves. Those earlier interventions are maybe where we need to put more energy And Apex may be sort of a, when that hasn't worked, then there's another option. And it might work better for some students than others, but I'd really like to see what we can do so that the child doesn't have the F on their transcript in the first place, because that's gonna really hurt, particularly in competitive schools. That's gonna hurt their chances. So, sorry if I'm going on and on, but I think that I'd like to think about that, you know, Apex as part of a whole solution, but certainly caution that we don't start leaning on it because it's easier for us or cheaper or whatever else. Those interventions should happen, and we need to structurally look, even in the, you know, all the way down elementary schools, to make sure that we're doing state-of-the-art to help our students excel.
Because it is, I mean, part of, and Reverend Wall, I agree with you in terms of implementation. I mean, when we fail and we need to review we need to review the steps of our current implementation, how we're using it, and are we using it correctly, what isn't working. We have to evaluate all those points. If we aren't evaluating all those points, then yes, it's a disservice to the students, and not only that, at the end of the day, then we are just using it as a tool to pass students on for graduation. And that's not the intent of it, right? The intent of it is all the students being able to get a really good education, being career ready and college ready, right? So I think that part of it, and I think staff has been evaluating the implementation processes that has been in place in prior years and trying to improve it. So, but again, we should definitely go back and have those discussions and reevaluate those points. And then also make sure that there is support in the elementary schools and at the GNI to be able to foster the continuation of learning and improvement for all the students.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight this slide. In my time as a high school principal, I was actually able to move our A to G requirements by almost 20%. So the amount of kids after my 3 years of being there that were A to G ready were 20% higher than they were when I showed up. And a big part of that is doing these types of things, right? Doing the interventions prior to the end. And I wanted to highlight this slide because I was actually very excited by, sorry, I moved, that Ms. Rangel had her attention on this prior to the summative need for credit recovery. So in many ways, although the attention right now is on Apex, it is just one piece of this larger plan. And I wanted to make sure that was clear. And I was pleasant, you know, I was happy to hear that that's been the focus. I would like them, that's why I kind of made this part in orange, to refocus on this part as because that part was interrupted during COVID. I'd like us to take that back up again at the high school if we can.
So I'm really interested in like performance-based metrics on how PAUSE is working. Because I mean, Rena and I did not go through that when we went through school here in the district, but so that's interesting to me to see if the interventions through PAUSE really work.
And that's one of the areas that I think will push, and Ms. Rangel, oh, she's fine. But I think this is one of those areas that will be the indication. One of the things that we did look when we saw the PAUSE data is that it was helping the kids who maybe had A's, B's, and C's get one grade higher. And so the focus this year is, yeah.
Definitely.
So the focus, and Ms. Rangel has an eye on this as well, and I'm excited to partner with his, is really focus, how do we focus more attention on the D's and F students to push those D's to C's, which will get at our A to G eligibility, as well as our F's into D's or F's even into C's, so that they're still A to G eligible, but so that they still do remain on track to graduate, because as Dr. Triplett said, with a 6-period day, even with the opportunity for a 7th period, it's very hard within the day to maintain what you need each year. So if I'm a junior, I need to take those junior classes and still have room for that credit recovery.
So as a current student, student board member, can you elaborate on your experience with PAUSE?
Yeah, well, so with PAUSE, I truly have loved it. A specific memory I have with PAUSE, sophomore year, I took 3 AP classes. Usually that's not recommended for sophomores, it's recommended only 1. I was quite ambitious. And I took AP Bio, one of like the most hardest classes. And while I am like an ambitious and rigorous student, AP Bio brought my grade down to a D- at one point, and I would have had to take Apex if it weren't for pause. And I'm pretty sure I spent from like November to until the pandemic started every Wednesday and Thursday in my bio class, studying the book, asking questions. My teachers would have like these fancy flashcards and like study groups and study guides, and it really helped me. In the end, I passed with a B, I believe, which, you know, with AP scores, it turns into an A. So it really helped me personally, and I know a lot of students, it also helps them like just take a break from everything that's going on. Sometimes it's not even about like, oh, I need to get these classes, I have this many homework. It's about organization. Sometimes you need to go talk to a counselor, like hear out counselors, get a second opinion. There's so much more that students can do with pause, and from what I've heard, it's really beneficial to everyone.
But the student has to take advantage of it, right? Correct. It's individually driven.
No, it's a period within the day. So it's actually within the high school schedule twice a week. Where students can, it's kind of a period where they get to, well, you should probably explain this. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, please do.
So on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we take our odd classes, first and third, and then right between ending of third and lunch, we have pause for, I believe, 45 minutes, I'm not sure. Iffy on times right now because the time schedule changed. And usually students make an appointment. Some teachers max their capacity at like 30, so you have to make an appointment. Like I remember I used to have to make them like Monday for sure, because they get packed with so many students, which is also crazy because you'd imagine so many students want to get to one class and like you're capped at 30. You have to go somewhere else. So usually, sorry, back to the main point, it's in between your third or fourth period, and then it's pause and lunch.
So the pause is not automatically assigned to the student who is, having or failing grade.
I'm going to invite Ms. Rangel up to, yeah.
So for the most part, it's student agency. I'm looking at my grades. I see I'm getting a D, and in my bio class, I'm going to go attend my bio class, and I'm going to sign up. It's a sign up. It's on Teach More. The students learned about it this week, how to access it. And then in some circumstances, teachers will assign. So if she wasn't doing well in bio and she was requested to go to Mr. Johnson's class, but yet she tried to go to PE, as she checked in at PE, her name would flag red. And she would be then sent back to bio. So it's really just, there's two different ways. Teachers can request based on their assessment of wanting a kid to relearn a component, and students have agency to choose. They can only choose to go with their 6 teachers, though. Pardon me? With their 6 teachers. So for example, we don't want them going, if they don't have Mr. Johnson, we don't want them going to Mr. Johnson to hang out. So they can only go to one of their 6 teachers.
Yes, so,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, one concern I have is we certainly want to make sure the resources there for the students that are struggling. Going from B to A is great, but the student that's getting an F and can get a C instead well, it shouldn't be a scarce resource, but if it is a scarce resource, it should be prioritized. Better just increase the resource somehow. Well, I mean, we get the money back when the students don't drop out, and we're getting ADA. So this can be part of an upward cycle rather than a downward one.
Could I add something while we're here?
Please.
So the past week, I was informed about the situation with Apex, and I tried getting student input instead of like data, which was really helpful. Like the student's voice, I would go around during lunch and like ask students like, hey, this is Apex, tell me what you think about it. And a lot of students said, oh, it's a like credit recovery program, that sounds amazing, right? But none of these students had taken Apex previously, so what I organized with Ms. Rangel and Ms. Canales, our activity director, we were able to send out a Google form that I created, asking them to like rate Apex, how it helped them, how it didn't help them, why they feel that way, and I believe I got 6 responses, 7 with asking previous students. And from what I heard from different students, sometimes it wasn't even about failing classes. It was that like they skipped let's say, like algebra 2 to geometry or algebra 1 to algebra 2, and they're required obviously to take geometry, so they have to go back and take APEX. And another input I got was that some students are afraid to talk to teachers, like it's their introverted personality, that they don't feel comfortable asking questions up in class, especially when it's like a rigorous class and there's the smart students in front. You feel kind of dumb sometimes asking the questions that apparently everyone knows. So from what I heard, APEX helped them like take notes. I heard there was flashcards, and the quizzes helped them and take notes and find out questions that they couldn't have asked during class.
I will say that was a part I was a little bit surprised about. I know that we heard some public comment around, going on Google to find answers and things like that. I will say I'm working on my dissertation right now and I use Google a lot, so I just kind of was like, that is a part of studying.
Well, and again, and that's where I'd like to get to where there's an independent assessment. So
yeah,
if you use Google to do your homework, you're going to pay for it when you go to do your test, right? So
well, not if you're using it for research, but
if you're using Google to take the test, then that's a problem.
Yeah. Yes. Not sure what time it is.
I mean, once
Almost
time
time.
that,
Okay.
any follow-up or request? So I guess my request is I want to see the financial impact of the 50-year option.
Okay.
And speaking of increasing accountability and prevention, what is the game plan there? About
What is the
preventing people
accountability?
from credit? Yeah.
Sort of accountability game plan.
And given the importance of this, right, in the intersection of teaching, I think that, so not only are teachers the front line, okay, so they're the ones that are delivering the instruction, things are going right or not on there, and then also they're also involved in the interventions as well. I would like us, to have some teachers come and speak about this whole process and what's working and what's not and what we need to do to fix it, because as we've all talked about, it's a deeper issue than just APEX.
Okay, then I guess maybe we'll have either follow-up study session or follow-up staff report on this, because this is obviously not done yet. We'll continue to
Is it all possible?
But President, we do have it's a bit time sensitive because I believe we're on hold. Is that correct, Ms. Pierce?
So the only students that are enrolled, so we have not enrolled any new students per the request, and I think there is a little bit of a,
Can you go back to the options slide? Because isn't it you need some direction on like right now?
Yeah, what we could do, obviously the board wouldn't vote in the study session, but if you want to give us some direction, we could come back to the board at the next session with a proposal.
Now, so with 3, are we also looking at alternatives? Can we do 3 and 4 at the same time? Can we move forward with 3 but also be having staff continue to look at alternatives? Is that something that could be done? Well, that's something I would support. Not that we're voting.
I would support it.
So, follow-up member Hills, please bring back teachers as soon as possible, because like we're going for student tour. Let's listen to what teachers have to say, and then I still want to see the financial impact of the 5th year. Then we might be able to make a decision soon.
as well as the accountability plan.
Yeah.
So
and also what would be good to see is, if we're considering, even on a temporary basis, continuing OPEX, so how many students are going to be, essentially in the mix for that, right? And so for this semester, for next semester, and then it would be good to understand, the associated costs of both continuing the program as well as if we're not going to continue the program, what we anticipate for costs. I think this is what President John is getting to, if we have an alternative, if we follow an alternative path.
I guess if we're going for the 5th year option, that's number 7, right? Discontinue APAC, remove most credit recovery options. That's if the 5th year, that's number 7, right? You have no.
You could do 7. You could have
4, 5, 6.
You could have 5th year and APEX. So that's.
Please don't think this. You can mix and match.
Okay.
This is a mix and match option.
Right. Yeah. So we hope to hear from the staff again pretty soon on this, and And that concludes our study session.
Can I make one comment? Just to Ms. Rangel, Principal Rangel, please pass along to the children who spoke how much we appreciate that. It takes a lot of courage.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Pierce.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. Everyone is mentioning like plans that we could do to help students before they actually fail class. I'm personally in a lot of rigorous programs outside of school, like relating to other universities.
So that concludes our study session. We'll be entering into closed session, and in closed session, we'll be discussing item 4.2, public employee discipline dismissal release. 4.3, conference with labor negotiator, employee organization, NTA and CSEA. 4.4, conference with labor negotiators, NUMA, unrepresented supervisor, and contract management. 4.5, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation. And 4.6, we'll be back to open session around 7 p.m. Any public comment for closed session? Ms. Gutierrez, any public comment for closed session?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we'll see you at 7.